Hello and welcome to episode 8 of Well Played. I'm your host Bluetongue from around Sydney, Australia. I'm joined by the hosts. Hollering in from the hills, we have Harrow. How you doing, Harrow?
Doing really well, Bluetongue. I've been loving Ruby Volume 3, been playing Knights of the Old Republic, Knights of the Fallen Empire, and I just finished reading V for Vendetta.
Cool. So is it the Knights of the Fallen Empire like the expansion for the Old Republic?
Yeah, it's the latest set. It's the latest expansion for for Star Wars: The Old Republic.
Yep.
It's really, really, really good the first time, except it really doesn't have much replayability, unlike the base version where you could had 8 different stories to play from. This one is essentially one story, and if you play it once is good, and you play it a second time is bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not much more story left to do.
So it doesn't add more content beyond story and narrative, is what I'm hearing.
Define content.
Well, hypothetically, there'd be like new raids and new
Yes.
experiences within the game, new weapons and new equipment and all that stuff.
Yes, it's got all that stuff, but not
Okay.
as much as so. But this expansion's mainly been on the single player story. There hasn't been, and there are flashpoints, so dungeons, and I'm not sure if there are new raids yet or if they've revamped old ones.
Okay, cool. Bounding in from the Blue Mountains, we have Cam. How you doing, Cam?
I'm doing okay, Bluetongue. I've just started a game. I don't know if anyone has heard of it, but it's called Fallout 4. It hasn't been all that popular. It's flown well under the radar, and yeah, I've basically started that and made my way just barely into the wasteland out of the vault. And then this other game I've been playing got in the way. I don't know if many of our listeners have heard of it. It's called PhD, and basically it gets in the way of all your other games, and it takes a lot longer to finish than you thought it might. It has all these extra missions, extra levels. I'm currently on the edit the last few errors that you made level. So
cool. So that's one of those games where you finish it, and it says congratulations, you've finished the game, and then it installs itself back onto your computer after you've removed it, and then you have to keep playing it for another few months.
There
just
are
for
unexpected expansion packs, yeah.
Yeah, and then it won't let you do anything else. Cool.
It's like I didn't want any DLC here, but yeah.
Awesome. I love free content.
Here the achievements are quite shit, actually, but yeah.
Actually, achievement getting to call yourself Doctor is the only reason that anyone ever does it, but yeah.
Cool. Gravitating in from Gladesville, we have Bauxite. How you doing, Box?
I'm pretty good. Yeah. I also have had Fallout 4 occurring in my household. Unfortunately, I've not been the one playing it. That has been my lovely wife.
You have one copy between the two of you?
We do.
The irony.
I'm going to be a little bit of a downer here. Yeah, so I bought it on Steam for my wife. She said, she came in and she goes, "Oh, look, I'm reading on Facebook about all these wives who have bought Fallout 4 for their husbands, and sort of saying how good, how they're really good wives, and for buying Fallout 4 because their husbands really want it, And I was thinking, since we don't do gender norms in our house, I could take the day off work and you could buy me Fallout 4, and I'm like, yeah, okay, fair enough. Look, it's $80 on Steam, no big deal. $80 is $80, whatever. It's still pretty steep. But it's, it's a good title and whatever.
Yep.
She starts looking at the credit card the next day and is like, "What's this thing for $115 on the credit card for Steam? What did you buy?" And I'm like, "Oh, I bought you Fallout 4." And she goes, "Yeah, but what else?" And I'm like, "Nothing." So it turns out that all the prices in the Steam store are in US dollars. Now, this is not going to come as a surprise for a lot of people, but it did for me because I'm not very observant.
You've been known to miss things, like the actual content of expansions and stuff.
So I paid $79 US for Fallout 4, which is $115 Aussie, which is shithouse. Sorry.
That's
it's $59
really
in the US. It's like, not only are we paying more, but our exchange rate makes it even more. It's like, what the hell? I'm really ticked about that. So, yeah, I'm happy.
Yes. I totally understand. Yeah. I had a very similar experience not too long ago. Let me fire up Steam and see if I can jog my memory.
I'm looking up, what is it, Fallout 4 on ebgames.com.au. I hope it's like $80, because then you'll feel really stupid. Oh, wait. For PC, $90, if you bought it from EB.
Yeah.
Wow. It's a sad world where EB is cheaper than Steam.
I picked it up for the PlayStation 4 from JB Hi-Fi for, off the top of my head, I think $69.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't think it's reasonable that we should live in a world where we should pay more than the Americans for exactly the same content.
I agree, especially when there's no other costs involved in creating and shipping. Seriously? Like...
Oh, they need to ship the electrons through the undersea cables.
Yes, of course. Every time they do that, they need like a whole new cable. Like, that shit's not cheap.
Hey man, I'm reading, what is it, Silo? Sending stuff over wires is expensive.
Okay.
I also read an article the other day, this is completely off topic, well, almost completely off topic, about...
How can something be almost completely... Sorry, go on.
Let's save that discussion for another time.
Okay.
How, if you actually weighed all the electrons in the internet that are currently moving, because, that's what the internet basically is, it's electrons moving around. The internet weighs 58 grams.
That's amusing.
Yeah. It's a lot lighter than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I agree.
What is it, the IT crowd? It's so light. Well, of course, Jen, the internet doesn't weigh anything.
Well, that's right. Yeah, that's the first thing I thought. I was like, well, actually, now it does. It's 58 grams. There you go. Okay. So how are you doing, Bluetongue?
I'm doing well. I just got back from a holiday over in Perth, which was fun, most of it. I got sick. That was less fun. I saw Prince Charles. That was strangely, unplanned. And I picked up a whole bunch of loot, which was fantastic. So I got the first edition of The Last Man by Brian K. Vaughan, which is the same author as Saga.
Maybe one of the best series ever.
Yes,
except without
apparently.
the main part.
I got a copy of Arctic Scavengers, which I've been looking for forever. So I picked up a copy of One Night Werewolf, and I also got a copy of the new Suicide Squad, and I've not read either of those yet because I'm currently reading a book which I bought on my Kindle called The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, which has actually been really good so far. I've been very, very much enjoying that. However, of note, in my experiences for the last 2 weeks, I got to watch BlizzCon, and I watched the grand finals of the Hearthstone Championships. That was good fun. And after which, they also announced that StarCraft II Legacy of the Void and Overwatch Collector's Editions were going to be available for pre-purchase. And I was excited by that. I got an email within minutes from EB Games saying exclusive purchases for StarCraft II Legacy of the Void Collector's Editions and Overwatch Collector's Editions. I'm like, that's an interesting thing. I'm really interested. I love collector's editions, especially the Blizzard ones. You get lots of little perks like art books and soundtracks or good soundtracks. Sorry, let me rephrase.
And pets, right? You get little pets in WoW as well, don't you?
Yeah, pets, card backs, all manner of things, skins, stuff in Diablo. Yeah, it's great. I really enjoy getting those collector's editions. I don't care for a little statue that goes along with the game. However, let me ask you guys this: how would you interpret the word exclusive?
Coming
to
from EB?
the exclusion of all others, so that you may only obtain it from them. However, that's not what EB means.
Yeah,
no, I think it means that you two are going steady now. And, yeah.
So apparently, so I've looked up the definition according to EB Games, and exclusively means you can get it only through them and other people who stock it.
Do you mean to tell me I can't go down to local newsagents and buy Legacy of the Void? It is exclusively at EB Games and only shops that sell it.
Yes, and only shops that sell it.
Mind blown.
You mean there's not even any online purchase from like Battle.net.com?
Well, no. So this is the physical collector's edition. So there's like 3 different versions of it now. So we've got like the normal edition. You've got your online edition. You've got your online collector's edition, and then you've got your collector's edition, which has like little statues in it and stuff like that.
Is there going to sound stupid. Is there a complete collection where you can get Wings of Liberty, Heart of the Swarm, Legacy of the Void for a reasonable price?
Not yet, but I'm sure there will be soon.
Yeah.
I would suggest probably Black Friday would be the best time to think about doing that sort of search for that sale. But yeah, so I went into EB thinking, I might pre-order it. There was a massive lineup. I said, nah, screw this, I'll go somewhere else. And went up and asked at JB Hi-Fi about it. He didn't know a thing. They looked at the Blizzard store online and which actual people stocked it, and apparently both EB and JB Hi-Fi are getting this exclusive copy of the collector's editions for Overwatch. So, moving on from my massive monologue rant, which I'm probably going to have to chop up. So... That's fine.
Speaking of chopping up, I've got some bodies downstairs. Oh, wait, no.
Ignore that one. Edit that out. So, Well Played is a podcast about sharing comic books, graphic novels, movies, TV shows, computer games, and board games we enjoy with our listeners. So, without further ado, let's get stuck in.
So, first up, we've got Seveneves, which is a book by Neal Stephenson. It came out this year, so relatively new, although we are in November. So, I don't know when it came out, what month, but...
May, I believe.
There you go, May. Thank you, Harrow. You're someone who's actually done research on this. There you go.
Thank you for following my links.
Yeah, so basically, give you a brief plot synopsis, and we're going to keep it relatively spoiler-free. We're not going to go beyond, say, the first paragraph in the synopsis. The moon explodes. Like, no one really knows why, but it did. And the rest of the book is basically the fallout from that. How does Earth look with a moon that's all in pieces? And apart from the very initial premise, it's pretty much hard science. There's very, very little in it that is too far beyond what humanity could achieve.
Okay.
Okay, nothing in there is impossible.
Okay.
Disagreements. Okay. Well, okay, there's no warp drives, lightsabers, or teleportation.
Okay, yeah. So it's realistic in that sense.
I'm going to say, Bauxite, we want people to read this book. Could you talk it up slightly, please?
Well, no, I mean, I really like it. The characters are fantastically crafted. They're... the astronauts in space have got, real sorts of personalities that astronauts have, which is hard line, get the job done, and generally okay to get along with. And then, because, the Earth is in dire straits because the moon stuff is occurring, we're sort of venturing into the spoiler territory here.
Yeah.
So people need to get off Earth, and then... When you just start getting the general population up in space, things start to go a bit pear-shaped.
Yes.
So,
in short, I just to give my sort of feedback on the book. The book is incredibly long. It is not a quick read. I did the audiobook version, and it's still 31 hours, which is no small undertaking.
So you're getting value for money in terms of quantity there.
That's true. There's a lot of said value placed in like various descriptions and other stuff that go into it. But that said, it's a highly original book. I really like that about it. And there's interesting characters, there's interesting character dynamics, and I enjoyed all of that. So I also would like to recommend this book to the listeners. Harrow, how did you feel about it?
I'm going to echo your sentiments there, Bluetongue. Really enjoyed it. It is a long slog. I'm not quite sure how it compares into the other Neal Stephenson book, Cryptonomicon, I read, but that was a long slog as well. Cryptonomicon felt longer. But yes, I also think the book is a bit padded because they do go into up-teen detail into some of the science of it. But if you're into that sort of stuff, it'll be like Christmas for you.
Yeah, I was doing other stuff while I was listening to it, so I had the opportunity to sort of almost black out that stuff that I found a little bit tedious, where you don't really have that option when you're reading through it. I'm really interested to see how many pages some of the longest descriptions go for. Yeah, okay, so let's move into spoiler territory for everyone.
Oh, yes, please.
What about, sorry, just before we do that, Cam, have you had encounters with Seveneves, or have you read about it or anything like that?
So, right now, Bobby Jindal, who was one of the candidates for the Republican presidency, has just dropped out of the race. He's basically been one of the top contenders for the Republican candidacy, and he's just signed a declaration that no Syrian refugees will come to his home state, despite the fact that he's got no power to do so. Now you guys know how I feel. I haven't read this book at all. So, yeah, basically, I've missed all this. So all of this is news to me. All of this is stuff that kind of has gone over my head, but continue.
Okay, cool. I was just like, I'm not sure exactly how relevant this is.
No, I'm just like, okay, this is going to be the most awesome segue ever. You're going to bring it back, you're going to tie it all in. No.
When he said he's dropped out of the presidential race, that's the part to star in the Seveneves movie?
Seriously, if they make it a movie, I'll be so sad. This has got to be a TV series.
Do you guys think that it sets itself up to be adapted?
Not to a movie. No way.
No.
In fact, I would say The Martian barely set itself up to be a movie.
Yeah. And The Martian was like 1/10 of the size of this, it felt like.
And having
it felt like, yeah.
Having seen The Martian, it was like, hey, yeah, you guys got away with this, you know? You adapted this seemingly unadaptable.
Yeah. I really strongly believe that The Martian would have been a much better TV series because it was in a lot of ways episodic, in that there were small challenges and small crises that, you know, at the time were huge, but there were a lot of them and there were a lot of overcoming these challenges. Similarly in Seveneves, there's like several challenges and not just one big climax, and like dissecting and really appreciating all of the challenges and all the work that goes into overcoming them is something that's much better handled in a series of episodes rather than 1 2.5 hour movie.
Yeah, this has really strong Game of Thrones connotations to me. Like, I can just imagine them leaving it like, oh my goodness, did that just happen? What happens next? Kind of situation.
Except there's no like 15 pages like descriptions of food.
Just 15-page descriptions.
Yeah,
15-page descriptions, twist and angle. Yeah. To go to your
Delta V, more Delta V. I need more information on this. This is so interesting.
Yeah.
To answer your question, Bauxite, about no, don't do it as a movie, do it as a TV series. What we were discussing about I put this in the notes for later, but I'll bring it up now. Considering the sheer size of the book and how, believe it or not, they do gloss over quite a few parts, could you see this as not a TV series, but as 3 movies? Because let me finish. Because the book
just like the Hunger Games. That was a good. Oh.
I love it.
Hey, my idea is brilliant. Shut up and listen. Split it into 3 movies because the book itself shifts in tone. The first part of the book is all about the survival of the human race, the race against time before this disaster happens. The second part is like this horror thriller where everyone's dying and you've got other astronauts not too far away, but you don't know what they're doing. And then the final part of the book is about this adventure where they're going out to meet other people. So because of the tonal shifts between the parts of the book, could you do 3 movies with a different tone for each one.
I'm not sure that would work.
Yeah, I don't think people would appreciate that. They'd be going into like the second one going, oh, what's it going to be? Oh my goodness, I didn't expect everyone to die.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, you'd kill everyone off at the end of the first movie, by the way. Spoilers.
I'd say, no, you kill them at the end of the second. I'd say second would be they're dead.
Yeah, actually that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
No, I think the problem would be the third movie. I don't think people would
Yeah,
really know what to do with the huge tonal shift. So,
Yeah.
In terms of what we're talking about here, the first third of the book is basically, oh crap, the moon blew up. Now, it's basically in 7 big chunks, and those chunks start smashing into each other, and then they get smaller and smaller, and the smashing happens more and more and more, and basically most of the moon is basically dispersed across the orbital path of Earth and starts falling in on Earth. And the main character, Doc Dubois, basically goes, Dubois,
yep.
yep,
Dubious.
yep, sorry, goes, oh shit, no, we're dead in like 2.5 years. We really need to like fix this now. And GTFO. So there's a few different plans, but the most universally accepted plan is people get off Earth and into orbit.
Yeah, because essentially the big chunks of the moon falling into Earth means that Earth is going to heat up by about 1,000 degrees.
Yeah, that's too hot.
Yes, too hot to live.
So the first third is basically them going, okay, how do we get off? The second third, the middle third is basically, okay, we're in space, how do we deal with the challenges of space?
Yeah.
And about halfway through that, most of the people on Earth are dead. The final third is 5,000 years in the future, where we sort of see what has happened with
The survivors.
the surviving, the survivors. So, yeah.
Yeah, good summary.
But, I mean, I don't really see that the final movie being 5,000 years in the future, there's such a huge change in cast. Like, there's no characters that are the same.
Yeah.
There's a huge change in situation. I don't know that moviegoers would really appreciate or be able to pick up on what happened in the last movie they saw 18 months ago.
You could do it in the format of, you know how they, in the futuristic bits, they watch all the histories? And the histories are like the actual webcams and the videos and the posts of people who have been putting stuff online, like we are now. And all their descendants have access to this, and this is the people that they've come from, and these are the people that they're related to. And it's part of everyone's history, and everyone knows this story about these bad guys and what they did, and these good guys and what the heroic things they did. And you could sort of phrase it in that way of sort of them looking back at what has happened to give it some measure of continuity, but still.
So you want to start the movie 5,000 years in the future and then immediately go into a flashback series?
In part, but like basically you watch some of the story, say, and it pans out into the people who are watching it, or like a group of people at essentially what it amounts to a church service to sort of like see what they're experiencing. Yeah, but it's just an idea.
I was going to say, because all the criticism you threw at my 3 movies idea, couldn't we also throw that at your television series idea? Because between season 2 and 3, or between seasons 1 and 2, you're going to have, your characters are all gone, and you're expecting your audience to love these new characters.
That's a format that they've used for, to a certain extent, a series that we were talking about a few weeks ago with, I remember the title now, the detective film with...
True Detective.
Certainly...
Yeah, that's a bit more of an anthology series, so I could see it possibly working for Seveneves as well.
Okay. So, what would you think is Neal Stephenson's biggest asset in this book? What makes it really engaging for the actual audience?
I think Neal Stephenson's biggest asset is his ability to write. As an author, that's incredibly valuable.
Okay, cool. So, now that we've just
Bauxite,
clearly
as always,
established
your
that.
insight astounds me.
Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it? Look, there were times when I'm not going to answer your question. I'm going to answer it in the negative, which is, brilliant listening. There were times when I was like a little bit fatigued by his long soliloquies about how this particular technological process worked. And sometimes I was completely fascinated by it. And, it was always good background. But the thing that really popped, the thing that really drew me in and kept me listening or reading was the interactions between the characters.
Yeah.
He's brilliant at writing characters.
Yeah.
And I won't say that that's necessarily true for all of his work, but it was definitely true in Seveneves.
I feel it's possibly... He's so good at it, he should probably spend more time doing that than, say, explaining all the gory details of what he's thinking a various technological process will work.
Yeah.
Just throwing it out there.
I do appreciate a complete and cohesive world, and a lot of the time when he is, explaining how a chain acts in zero gravity, that does become completely relevant later on.
Mm-hmm.
And there are sort of callbacks to that later on in the story, which I do like. So, although, in part one we have what seems like a tedious and insignificant 3-page narration about this chain in zero gravity moving around, which is, interesting, it actually becomes incredibly critical in part 3.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Where they build a massive giant chain and put a thing on the end?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like a habitation.
And,
okay.
the thing with the, what is it, the hammer?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, that thing, that could go wrong so badly, so easily.
Yeah, so there, in part 3, massive spoilers, so skip ahead like 30 seconds if you don't want to hear this bit. One of the characters needs to get off the planet ASAP, and so what they do is they deorbit a huge chunk of metal attached to a chain, and she basically stands on the other end of the chain and then gets flung up into space and out of the way into safety. So that was really cool.
Yeah.
The cool part was how the actual capsule she goes into gets there.
Yeah. It was, very well described, very, interesting as well. I think that I would like to know how much of that was actually scientifically robust, but it seems to check out, so yeah.
So, what did you guys think? Did you guys experience any plot holes in this that you found to be a little glaring?
I would like to know why the moon blew up. I know it's just the thing. It's supposed to be this minor detail which sets the whole chain of events going. But
you're like, hang on, what?
I would like to know why.
There's an implication that an anomaly has flown through it and has resulted in its implosion.
Yeah, I use it normally in IT when I don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah, well, and that's half of what the explanation in the book it basically results in. What kind of explanation would you be happy with? Like, would you be happy with like a really super hard asteroid like punching a hole through it and resulting in it like destabilizing like that?
If they punched a hole through them and they could they have the cradle? I don't know.
Yeah, probably still.
Yeah, there'd still be big chunks.
Maybe Chuck Norris roundhouse kicked the moon.
Yeah, makes sense. I don't know.
Okay.
'Cause part of me thinks if this was somehow man-made, like, oh yeah, we're just testing out this oh shit, then there's going to be more repercussions when the time came for the world to work together to get the people into the Cloud Ark. I don't know. So I think a human fault is the wrong way to do it, but then how do you do it?
I actually like that that's not answered. I don't think that he could necessarily come up with a scientifically robust reason why the moon would just explode. The one posited in the book is that a micro black hole whizzed past and tore the moon apart, but they're not sure if that happened. That was just like a hypothesis.
Yeah.
But if that did occur, I kind of feel like they would be able to pick up the gravitational
effect
effect
it would have
of
had
that,
on
yeah.
Earth and everything else as well. Yeah.
Yeah. But that being said, look, I actually don't mind that it's left a little bit unknown.
Yep.
It's a mystery. I'm curious to find out why, but I'm actually quite okay with that. The moon explodes, that's fine. We'll move on from there, and we'll be really diligent in how all the dominoes fall from there.
Yeah, I'm also happy with that. What I'm not happy with is a few of the points where I was sort of left going, yeah, no, that wouldn't work like that at all. So the first plot hole that I found to be a little glaring is the existence of the pingers at the end of the book.
Yeah.
So essentially, the idea is that there's 3 groups of survivors at the end of Seveneves. The first group,
huge spoilers right now.
Yeah, and I warned you a long time ago. So yeah. So there's 3 groups of survivors. There's the spacefarers who you follow. There is the diggers who you meet. They essentially dig themselves into the earth. And then there is the pingers who lived underwater for that amount of time. Now, it's made abundantly clear that the oceans are going to evaporate in the course of the book. Like, the atmosphere is meant to heat up to like over 1,000 degrees. Obviously, no water is going to be sort of left in the oceans. How on earth does said ocean even, is there a safe place to go in the ocean? No, not really. All the water is boiling around you. So I was deeply confused by that note of it.
Look, there are clefts, and I'm sure there are areas they could go, like a natural sink we could get in where there would be pockets of water trapped. But I'm not sure how long you could. I'm sure there would be pockets underground where the water couldn't evaporate, couldn't go anywhere. But I can't imagine they'd be big enough to, create a society or gather food and resources. Yeah.
And for people to live there on an indefinite basis.
Yeah.
The same goes for the people who dig themselves into the ground. The atmosphere is over 1,000 degrees. It's hot down, even like a kilometre or 2. It's super hot at the top, which basically means the people in the middle just get baked, as far as I can tell.
Yeah. Like a sandwich press.
Yeah.
All the cheese.
Exactly.
So, I've got a little bit of a mining background, and even a couple of 100 meters underground, it actually starts to get quite warm. So the reason the surface of the Earth is actually relatively cool is because the only thing is because we've got a huge atmosphere, sure, but on the other side of that is space, which a lot of heat gets shed from the Earth because of space. So if our atmosphere actually started to get real hot, even a little bit underground would get really hot. I don't know how they would keep the underground cool enough. Now, I'm not sure. I don't remember 1,000 degrees being the figure of how hot the atmosphere got.
Okay.
So I can't double check on that, but I got the feeling that there were some pockets in the deep trenches that didn't get to boiling temperature, but sure. I can't verify.
Yeah. So. Okay. No worries.
But the thing about that actually really irks me, I guess, is that we have 3 groups of survivors. Now, the story of how the spacers survive is wow, so unlikely. There's so many close calls. There's so many technological challenges they overcome.
And there's still massive things that go wrong.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But, yeah, the fact that they do survive is so serendipitous. It's such a fluke, and it's a huge credit to the hard work of the characters and how they problem solved all these absolutely mind-bogglingly troubling problems they encounter. But the fact that the diggers survive and the pingers survive, yeah, I don't really get that all 3 groups would survive. Now, I mean, look, the world probably has numbers on its side. There's probably more than one group of people digging a hole in the ground and living in it. And there's probably more than one group of people submerging themselves in subs. So I guess in that regard, there may be a couple of groups that do survive after all. So
from your description at the beginning of these hardline astronauts getting stuff done, the diggers were working class blue collar, but pingers were military. I think they would have a better chance from that perspective. They'd have a better chance of surviving than the spacers or the diggers.
Yeah, I think characterizing the diggers as working class blue collar inverted commas is probably not super accurate. There's a lot of super smart mining engineers out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Who know their shit about digging holes in the ground.
But they're private sector capitalists. Yeah, you know what I'm getting at. They're not highly disciplined military men.
I don't know if you kind of do them justice by saying they know their shit about digging holes in the ground. But certainly, these are educated people. These are people that know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's give those two points a pass. Let's say there are three groups of survivors. Cool. And there's just other plot points which just confuse me no end. So, in addition to the existing spacefaring population, which amounts to a few of the people on the International Space Station, there are other people sent up to sort of continue the human race. Now, all those other people sent up, they spend all the time that they have on Earth, mostly, preparing to go up into space. And those people who are prepared for 2 years to go up into space, which is probably about as long as some astronauts get. I guess they had some.
No way.
No,
astronauts get tens of years.
Really? Okay. Well,
yeah.
But they would have had existing military backgrounds in piloting skills and other stuff like that. Okay, they've got 2 years before going into space of study and space travel and what that means. They get up there and then suddenly think it might be a good idea to go to Mars instead of hanging around the Earth?
Yeah, I actually found that super interesting. And although you raise it as a plot point, I actually think it's quite
feasible.
Oh no, not going to Mars. Going to Mars is batshit crazy. No, the fact that people think that going to Mars might be a good idea is not crazy.
Yeah.
There's a character called Julia who is president of the United States. And yes, we do. About halfway through the first third of the book, all the countries in the world are like, oh crap, we're all going to die. Need to save the human race somehow. So they sign this thing called the Crater Lake Concordat, which is basically, each country's going to send 2 people to space camp, essentially. And
population percentage, not each country gets 2. But anyway, continue.
Well, it's each people group, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that. But it's not like New Zealand gets 2 and Russia gets 2. It's done by your race and percentage. And yeah, anyway, please continue.
So New Zealand send 1 person and a kiwi fruit, basically.
No, one man and a sheep, right?
Yeah.
yeah. Actually, 2 sheep, 1 person. Sorry, do continue.
Anyway, so we have pairs of people being sent from different people groups. And one of the things in the agreement was that no political figure would get sent up into space. However, Julia, the president of the US, just happens to have her own private rocket that she has access to and somehow manages to make it up into space on the last day when Earth is basically getting toasted with, falling moon bits.
So it totally wasn't her fault though. She was completely blameless as far as that goes. She was, she just accidentally happened to end up in that rocket that got launched into orbit.
Rocket? I thought this was the restroom.
Whoops! What a silly mistake of mine.
To be honest, that happens to me every other day. So, yeah.
Yeah. So she winds up in space, and being non-sciencey and quite political. And all of these people being sent from all the people groups, the pairs of, a boy and a girl, or a male and a female, I guess.
They're young.
Cisgendered male and a cisgendered female. Get sent, they're young. They're less than 20. They're basically the youngest and, in most cases, most potentially skilled people from those populations, the most intelligent, the most physically fit. And a couple of countries did it completely randomly, but for the most part, these are meant to be the best of the best. But they're not trained. They're young.
Well, they are trained for space camp. So they've done a year at least probably a bit more.
Maybe 18 months.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I remember when I was younger, and, you know, maybe, let's say 20, I made some frickin' terrible decisions in my life. And if there was a strong character who was, you know, used to be the president of the United States, was like, hey, I have a good idea, let's go to frickin' Mars. I'll be like, oh, you know, you seem to know what you're talking about.
Let's ask the scientists.
Yeah, see, that's what I don't get. Like, the critical part of me just goes, maybe we should talk to other people before we decide that this is a great plan.
Yeah, but then there's the part of me that's like, yeah, but how do we know those scientists are living on the, you know, the space station when I get to live in this tiny little hab? You know, maybe they don't have my best interests at heart.
Yeah.
You know, maybe they don't want me to live a nice life. Maybe they're trying to screw me over. I can see that. No, you guys are not thinking about this emotionally. You're seeing this as a purely logical problem.
I know, and why wasn't it hammered into all these young ones? It's not about you. No one gives a shit about you. It's about the continuation of the species.
Because they're people that would listen to an American president, so
yeah,
they're only thinking
young
about
people.
themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'll concede that people would make rash decisions and people would potentially do stupid things along those lines. But, gee, like, I would like to think that the people that had some measure of experience living in space would realize how ridiculous a plan that was. That's just me.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. We have the benefit of having read The Martian. So, unfortunately, The Martian doesn't exist in Seveneves. So
no, tragically. So aside from these points, there's
apart from 7 things we've listed.
It is a really enjoyable read.
Yeah,
the story is exciting, engaging.
Surprising.
Things like
very surprising.
Absolutely. There's times when they're like, okay, so we're at this orbital level. We need to be at that orbital level because this one's about to get toasted. How do we get there? And we don't have enough fuel. And, you know, there's a huge problem where they need to try and get enough water, believe it or not, to turn into propellant to get up to a higher orbital level. There's issues where, okay, so we've got all these pairs of humans from the world, but we've also got a huge genetic library as well of, you know, sperm and eggs. So, oops, that got toasted. What are we going to do now? Well, I guess we need to break out the old, you know, genetic sequencing machine and rewrite the genetic code so there's not huge inbreeding. By the way, the only humans surviving in space are these 8 women. There's another problem there.
Yeah.
So.
That said, another one of my plot points that I wanted to raise is like, okay, the last human man alive that we are aware of is dying in that room next to us.
Yeah.
I've just got one suggestion. He's still alive at the moment. He still would have, say, working man parts. Let's go and borrow some of that quickly. We may need it later.
That's true. Why didn't they milk him?
Or, you know, just send him out happy.
I don't understand what you guys are getting at. Can you explain this to me?
Anyway, I find that to be a little bit of a plot point, and instead they decide that it's a better plan to genetically resequence all these women and plan out the future of the human race in that sense.
Yeah. There's just something very kind of, I guess, I wouldn't say it was a hole in the plot or a kind of a hole in the story as much as just you look back on it and you think that doesn't make sense. At the time of writing, I'm sure the author just merely thought of that as a logical way of going about things, being how much he's science things so far. You know, I don't think it was in the mentality.
Well, I see the point. The difficulty from my perspective is that, okay, the book's title is Seveneves, and that was clearly where he was intending for this first segment of the book to end. And if that was the plan all along, why not have, say, the remaining male population die suddenly and unexpectedly, as opposed to slowly in the room next door, while like the potential future of the human race becomes so much more difficult.
I mean, okay, that's an absolutely fair point. My counterpoint is, I read a story recently about how this, I don't remember the name of the book, but this general decides to, has a huge army, 600,000 men, decides to invade Russia in the winter. I mean, who does that? That author was absolutely smoking crack. No reasonable general with as much experience as Napoleon, for instance, would try and invade Russia in the winter. I mean, come on. I guess my point is, you can look back at that and poke holes in it, but at the same time, maybe at the time, in the moment when, we've just got shot at by some people in a space bubble, and,
shot at by cannibals.
yeah, and bullets in the thing that holds in our, our atmosphere, and, it's pretty stressful. Everyone's just died. It might not have been the first thing on their mind. Mm-hmm. It should have been, sure. But, look, hindsight is 20/20, and deconstructing the problems, you can usually find the root cause. But
yeah, but why? But you can say that, but why? The humor, the comedic part of me is going, so why isn't the last man alive in the other room going, hey, get it while it's hot, it's quickly expiring?
Well, he did, actually. He said, I'm the last man alive, and...
I could have had my choice. Oh, it would have been wonderful. Dead.
Yeah.
It's like... Yeah. Really? Anyway... Maybe I'm just looking at this from a male perspective.
Maybe
why couldn't I be the last man on Earth? With hot
all right. What other points did you guys want to raise in relation to this book?
One of the plot, again, we're still going on plot points. How they spoke about, the world gets the news it's doomed, and yet humanity seems to behave itself. I'm not quite sure it would.
Well... Yes and no. I mean, was it Venezuela who decides to drop nukes?
No, they got nuked when they decided to try and attack other people.
Venezuela, so they decided the best way to select their, pair of humans to send into space was to do it absolutely 100% randomly. And Space Camp was like, okay, well, we've got all these, prime choice best of the best people from all the other countries and people groups, and then there's the Venezuelans.
Yeah.
They're a bit
special.
Oh, yeah. So they didn't get chosen to get put into space, and Venezuela was like, "What the hell, man? Why didn't you send our people up? We're gonna start invading your spaceport." And everyone else was like, "Nah, we're gonna nuke you." So, yeah.
That ended poorly for them.
Yeah, but
that's actually the leader of the Pingers that dropped the nuke, if I recall correctly, which was super interesting.
Yes.
And that sort of has a bit of an interesting shadow on their legacy later on. So, which isn't fully explored, but I would love... I mean, the Pingers were just like, hey, and then there's these Pingers right at the end.
Yeah, exactly. There was very little information that went into the expansion or explanation as to why they survived. Which
makes me feel like there could be a sequel.
Yeah, quite possibly.
Sorry, but Ray, go back to my point about humanity behaving yourself and saying the Venezuelans rebelled. That was near, day 700 and something? The end was nigh. I'm talking day 2.
Yeah, look, there's other references in the book as well to mass suicides and, other really depressing stuff going on around the world. So... I wouldn't say that the sort of humanity emerged unscathed from that potential sort of realization. But, yeah. It is extremely grim. It is probably the most grim passage of a novel that I've ever read in my life.
Yeah, the home improvement industry bombed. It was so depressing.
Mm.
Well, pretty much every industry would have bombed.
It makes you sit there and wonder about things like, gee, I wonder if there would have been enough food. Would people have even bothered to continue growing stuff? And what people are going to be interested in shipping stuff around the world when they've only got 12 months to live? Those sort of questions are raised in my mind.
And I'm really thinking that there would be a certain percentage of the population that would be like, okay, what do we need to do to ensure that humanity survives, even if I'm not going to survive? Okay, we need to make steel. Okay, I'll turn up to my job at the steelworks and I'll, push out those steel slabs.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, then I guess that's looking on the bright side of it. Is sort of all these people who are in the face of imminent demise and in a really horrific way, continue doing their absolute darndest to make sure that the people who are going into space have the best chance possible.
Yeah, and I actually think I don't think that's optimistic. I think that is reasonable, that there would be a variety of reactions across the human population, and there would be some people who would be like, okay, I've got 2 years left to live, I'm going to end it now, because I don't want to see what happens over the next 2 years. There'd be some people who'd be like, okay, now's the time to start the raping and pillaging. And there'd be some people who'd be like, okay, we can really make a go of this, and if we work hard, there'll be more people who will survive.
Yep. And I'm planning on stopping those people who do the raping and pillaging. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And, I'm assuming there'll be, martial law enacted in a lot of places as well.
Yeah.
And I think before the main announcement was made, that probably would have been set up.
Yeah.
I'd just love to be there in the staff meeting. Since we disclosed that the world is going to end, there's been a 30,000% increase in Vikings.
Yeah. It turns out the only thing stopping the Vikings was an intact moon. They are anti-werewolves.
That's hilarious. So, there's another interesting point here. The massive time skip in the book. How did you guys experience that? Did you think that was a positive or a negative thing for him to do?
I think he really wanted to tell that story, in some ways, and the first 2/3 of the book was just setting that up.
Yeah.
So I think it was almost necessary for what he wanted to achieve. I mean, I'm speculating here. I haven't, read anything or talked to him. He's, not my next door neighbour or anything.
Yep. But what about you, Harrow?
It was jarring because, as you're saying, the first 2/3, they're about these are these horrific problems. This is how we overcome it. Oh, 5,000 years later. I was like, well, okay, how did you make a ring around the world? Where did you get more resources? How do you have enough carbon and water to make 3 billion people? Yeah.
Yep. That's all perfectly valid points.
Yeah.
And the answer to your question is yes.
Chains.
Technology and stuff.
Honestly, I think they probably would have scooped up a bit of atmosphere.
Yeah?
Yeah. I don't think anything in there is impossible. Maybe it is. I don't know. Because the spinning ring has gravity, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see someone do the calculations on that and go, yeah, the ring would have to be, 80 times stronger than steel in order to get that gravity going. But I think it actually could be possible.
Okay. I found the time skip to be, like you said, quite jarring. So that you get to that point in the book and you're like, oh, finally all this awfulness is over, and then
no, let's next time there's awfulness.
Yeah, exactly. Like let's completely forgo all the positive stuff that happens over the next however long, and then straight back into the awfulness. Great. I think there was definitely room for more information about exactly what happens after that and the ongoing character dynamics and all that stuff.
Something I actually liked again in the first, maybe the middle section of the book, how when the young impressionable astronauts finally called bullshit on Julia, and they had a social media war because they can't go around beating each other up. They're in space, so. Yeah,
that doesn't stop them doing it shortly thereafter, which I find confusing.
As soon as they all get in the same room, the beating up begins. But yeah, a social media war. Very interesting, because that was the first thing they got sorted out for the young astronauts. They had to have Facebook and Space Twitter and all other social media set up.
Yeah. And access to Bing.
And access to Bing.
Yeah, it was an interesting sort of way to sort of explain that part of it. Ironically, still, most of them die anyway. I found the punishment for Julia to be quite amusing.
Sorry, most of them die? Did they not get enough likes on Facebook?
You can turn that into food, right?
No, I just love that the powers that be. I got 13 likes. No, you need 15 to live.
Isn't that always the way?
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting ways that different sort of circumstances take place. I was very surprised when there's certain really negative plot twists throughout the actual series. But all things considered, I feel good about having read the book, and I would recommend other people look at it as well. I've recommended it to my wife as well at the moment, so she's going through it too.
Yeah, I definitely think it's worth the investment.
Yeah.
My wife has read it. She thoroughly enjoyed it. And in fact, that's where the comment came from. Oh, she's a smart, independent woman. In the first third of the book, she was like, man, this Julia character, it's really good to see that there's a female president. And I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. And she's like, a bit later on, she's like, wow, she's really having to make some hard decisions, you know? I mean, I really admire that. You know, she's putting the interest to humanity first. Oh, she's made it into space. That was interesting. I guess I like that the character's still alive, and okay, she's sort of manipulating everyone, and okay, everyone seems to be dying because of Julia's crazy idea. Okay, I hate Julia. And I just loved watching her just go from, yeah, go female president, to I wish she was dead. When are they going to airlock her? It was fantastic.
I'm sure we'll see the same reaction to Hillary, say, next year.
Oh, gosh.
I
would be so sad if, I know we're talking politics, proper politics now, but I cannot believe, I believe that Hillary's going to make it purely so she can be, inverted commas, the first female president. And not that that's not I don't think that's a bad reason, but I think people should be voting on policies. Crazy though, you know, but...
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's completely unlike what happened in Australia.
Oh, come on. The alternative was what? Another Howard?
Mm-hmm. Anyway, moving away from politics, because
really?
I don't want Cam participating in this conversation anymore.
hey, come on! It would only take us 2 hours tops. 2 hours to get through all of all the things to do with politics in this week. But.
Yeah. So, what do you think of Bernie Sanders?
Oh, personally, I hope he gets the nomination. I don't see it happening at all. We can't have nice things. I think, I think Clinton will probably get it because she owns the party, basically. See, that didn't take that long. That took like 2 minutes.
Can I segue into another thing about politics? About, there is an entire race of scheming, paranoid, narcissistic Julians in space. And humanity still survived. I find that surprising.
Yeah, it's almost like we have never had a community with narcissistic, scheming people on Earth.
I'm just surprised no one called ethnic cleansing, truth be told.
Yeah.
In the book, it's an entire race of people.
Politicians, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Politicians and religious leaders.
Yeah, a nation of them.
Great.
Basically, narcissistic psychopaths, but also, we're really getting down on Julia.
Independent.
Yeah, they are strong and independent, but she also has many redeeming qualities in that she is extroverted, which is, compared to the rest of the people in space, they're a little bit nerdy. They are astronauts, so they're not, complete introverts, but, yeah, there is a little bit of introverted spectrum going on those guys. She is definitely a people person. She sees the worst situation that can occur and goes to try and stop that. And let's be honest, the fact that she does make it down to the last 8 people surviving in space, survival of the fittest, maybe she does have something that benefits her to actually surviving.
Yeah, look, there is no way she would have survived.
You would have made sure of that?
Well, no. Realistically speaking, just put her through the exact same scenario up until the point when she's up in the swarm and she gets defeated, and there's 11 people left. She would have been eaten a long time ago. Like, you don't just leave someone that you really hate passionately just living there and continuing to feed them when food is that scarce.
But yeah, that being said, I don't like to eat things that I hate. So,
yeah, yeah. Let's say that situation gets very grim very quickly. In case the whole cannibalism thing didn't bring that out. All right. So moving along to our next subject, I'm going to have to, I think, cut a few chunks out of that one.
Yeah, just like we should have cut a few chunks out of Julia.
Yeah, exactly. So the next subject that we have for the podcast today is a board game.
I thought there was the Cooking Humans cookbook.
Great.
That's actually how to cook for 40 humans.
Oh.
Anyone who's a fan of Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episodes as much as I am would get that, but yes.
Or Twilight. Sorry, not Twilight. Twilight Zone. No, the other one, not the bad one. Yeah, that was originally based on a Twilight Zone episode.
Yep.
Which is, yeah, anyway.
Okay. So, the game...
Sanders.
Bernie Sanders is going to have an interesting campaign. An interesting campaign is something in which you would never get bored. Speaking of bored, we're talking about a board game.
Smooth. Thanks for the segue. Good segue. We have the smoothest segues right here in this podcast.
I really think he's going to sweep the polls. Speaking of sweeping the polls, Broom Service is the board game that we're talking about this week.
Which segue shall I use? So many fantastic options.
We're going to lose subscribers for this, I think you realise.
Let's just
but
say...
not as badly as I lost that board game when we were playing Broom Service a few weeks ago.
And not as badly as Bernie Sanders is going to lose the election.
Hey, don't depress me here. Come on, I don't think the Repubs have a chance. Sorry, yes, Broom Service.
So, Broom Service is a game by Andreas Pelikan. I'm reading that right? Pelikan. Yep, Pelikan. And Alexander... Oh, really? Fister?
Those notes were actually inaccurate, but we wrote them that way, having done a big search on...
Who changed these notes?
Wait,
that's probably their actual name, yeah.
Yep. Okay, so Andreas Pelikan and Alexander Fister, published by Alea, and it's Ravensburger Spielverlag. I'm just going to stop trying to pronounce all this stuff. It is a game for 2 to 5 players. It lasts for, say, 30 to 75. I'd say perhaps even 95 minutes, depending on how many people and how experienced said players are.
Yeah, I would also say depending on how snappy decision makers the players are.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of opportunity to go, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. The game itself has many interesting and appealing qualities. The production value is quite good, I feel. The actual brightness and color has a lot of visual appeal to it too. And the design is quite simple and straightforward. However, the game itself is deceptively difficult and strategic to master, in my personal opinion. And essentially,
that's actually probably one of the biggest and best points of it, is that it's easy to learn and difficult to master. So it's got a lot of depth to it.
Yeah. Now, the game itself is essentially you control two witches on this board in this fantasy world, and there's a bunch of towers over this world, and those towers desire different coloured potions. Your job is to deliver said potions to said towers. You get points for doing that, and for a few other little bits and pieces as well, like collecting clouds and certain sort of bonus objectives and stuff like that. So it's a really interesting game to play, and it's relatively straightforward to teach, as we just sort of described. Now, I've only played it twice. I went out and bought it after I played it the first time. How many times have you guys played it?
I think I've played it about 18 times.
Okay. What about you, Harrow?
3.
3. Okay. Cam?
I hit it up that one time. So
okay.
The one game.
Now, of your impressions, how did you guys feel about if you had purchased this game, would you feel like it was a strong purchase or a weak purchase? What do you think?
I think it's probably one of the stronger purchases in my collection. I think it's got a lot of replayability, and yeah, I do need to choose the audience, but I know maybe 6 people who would play that game with me at a drop of a hat. It is, like you said, particularly strategic, and it does take a lot out of you, so I don't think it would be something that I would pair with another strategic game later on in the evening.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to play a few light games and one heavy game, that would probably be the heavy game. And it is actually deceptively heavy. It looks whimsical and fun and light, but there is actually really deep strategy in it.
Yeah. What about you, Harrow? What did you think?
If you'd asked me this the first 1 or 2 times I'd played, I would have said it's strong purchase. But I think my problem with this game is as far as I can tell, there is one winning strat, and everyone else is just wasting their time.
Okay. Cam, how did you feel about your one playthrough?
So, like you asked earlier, if it's a strong purchase. What I thought was the strength of it was something you mentioned, which is art style and how this looks visually.
Yep.
I think that would be the strength of purchasing it. But yeah, look, one of those kind of games where it could be a great zippy game. It could be a great game where, yes, it's strategic, but if they were to cut down the number of rounds that you have to play through it, it's one of those things where, like, I thought maybe the first 3 rounds, maybe 4 rounds were quite exciting, quite tense. It went on too long. I really thought it was too long a game. It struck me as similar enough in length to the likes of Risk, kind of in as far as there is depth to it, and yes, you expect to be seated there for a while, but yeah, to my liking, it was too long.
Okay. That bear in mind, your one playthrough did comprise of, 3 of the 5 players who had never played it before, and then me's played it once.
3 of the 5 players who were also almost incapable of making a snappy decision.
Yeah. So that certainly did drag the game on. I think that game ended up going for about 3 hours.
No way.
No,
that was after that was after we filled the Gambians, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they felt like 3 hours because we'd done 2.5 hours of manual labour immediately.
But certainly, I mean, to sort of blame those who play it, it does seem a little bit like there's a design feature here whereby it just does stretch on. And maybe that's just my taste in games, but yeah, I didn't rate it so highly.
Okay.
I think it stretched on because we were playing the 5-player version.
Yeah,
in a
true.
2 and 3 player game, I've never had it last an hour and a half. I've most of the time got it done in just over an hour.
Yeah. So, Bauxite, did you have any particular highlights that you've played through for this game, or lowlights, where you found it to be particularly frustrating or difficult to actually continue?
Well, yeah. Out of my 18 games, I've won 15 of them. So I quite like that. Not to brag. Actually, I'm bragging. But the 3 times I've lost, I've played with one particular person called Brenton, a good friend of Harrow and mine. And each time he's gone straight for my throat when I've made a move, he's made the same move the next round in order to make sure that I cannot achieve my goals. The first time he beat me by a single point. The second time we both lost, and another player who we both underestimated won. And the third time was again just me and Brendan, and he won by 2 points. So in those games, it's been incredibly tight, and I've found that massively challenging and really enjoyed the fight. We've gone for different strategies pretty much each time out of those 3 games, and each time he's managed to just eke out 1 or 2 more points than me. So highlights, yeah, sometimes there's incredibly strategic games, and they're incredibly fulfilling. I also like that, actually, I'm going to contradict you, Harrow. There is more than one winning strategy. You can go for just hanging back in the main play area and killing clouds for points.
Tried that.
Well, I've tried it and I won by 30.
I guess it depends how much competition you have in that area.
Yeah, in fact, it does vary incredibly much based on who you're playing with and what they choose to do.
And also which clouds land in that area as well.
Yeah, I was incredibly lucky in that game in that the big point clouds all happened to land within a moderate distance of the starting location. Yeah. So I could gather a heap of potions, and I got about 25 points from just having good clouds, from getting from having a lot of resources, and another 30 on top of that just because I had more than 7 lightning bolts, which is what the clouds produce at the end of the game. It is possible to do. There is a strategy where you can go for the top right corner of the board, which is basically the furthest from the starting location. It is the hardest to get to, but if you do manage to get there, pretty much the whole way you can drop potions behind you, poisoning the well for anyone who comes up behind you afterwards, and manage to get to the really big point areas. Now, when I played that with Brendan, he followed me the whole way, and half the time it was one step ahead of me, half the time I was one step ahead of him, and neither of us really got to. I think I ended that game on like 110 points, which is quite high, but neither of us got really quite as much out of it as we possibly could have.
Yeah.
As far as lowlights go, you guys have praised the art. I hate it. I really do. Okay. The box looks like garbage. I pick it up, and there's a witch on the front. And, look, the art's fine, but it does not have the same production value as, say, a Fantasy Flight game. And I think what it makes up for that is the fact that it has 10 times as much strategic gameplay than any Fantasy Flight game in the box.
Yeah, very true, very true.
But the box itself, it's a bit boring. It's not, it's got this weird purple border, which is, purple's a great color, fine. But the art doesn't engage me. It doesn't make me feel like this is a heavy strategic game. It makes me feel like this is something I would play with my nephew.
Yeah, it's something whimsical and light, which it is not. So it's a little misleading in that sense.
It can be. But, if you want to win, your strategy will punch anyone who's just playing for fun in the face. So I think in terms of production value, it's incredibly easy to underestimate this game. The board itself is a little bit busy, and I can understand why, because there's a bit of flavour in, the mountains are very nicely illustrated, but there is also a lot going on the board itself, and it's hard to sort of pass, I guess, what the good areas are just from looking at it, because there is so much stuff just in that square of cardboard. So
yeah. Look, I comparatively speaking, I like the bright colours. I think the illustrations are good. I enjoy looking at them, and I like that everything is distinguished into different sort of colour categories, so you can associate things that way rather than having to know exactly what the card says. Makes it certainly playable, say, in other languages if you needed to do that. The one low light I wanted to bring up for this game was multiple rounds in the second to last game of it that I had played, where I got completely shut out. I took many options, of stuff to do, and then everything just happened in the wrong order, and in no way for me to actually execute any of it, and I got to do nothing for an entire round, and that was hugely frustrating to be like just stuck on the board doing nothing.
Yeah, there can be a bit of feel bad in that. It is hard. There are times when you're like, okay, all I need to do is get one of these potions, and you need to get one of these potions and then do something, but things just happen in the wrong order, and then you can't get your potion, and there is a bit of getting shut out, especially with the way other players play their cards. So there's an element in this game where the person who goes first chooses what role everyone will play, but that they also probably get the least amount of value out of that role than anyone else. So, yeah, and the person who goes last has the option to take first player and get a whole lot more value out of that role. So, yeah.
I think the other difficulty that I've had with this game is the fact that I played it with you every single time. And this, the winning strategy of running up to the right-hand corner, isn't like fully appreciated until you explained it about like poisoning the well behind you and stuff like that. I guess there's potential for a different route to be taken up into that corner.
Yeah, there's 4 routes up there. There's cutting like straight across the diagonal and killing the cloud in the middle. There's going up the top left and then across the top, and then there's going across the bottom right and then going up the top, and then there's sort of going to the middle right and then up the top. Yeah,
I think the middle right and up the top is the most, like, has the most potential to actually be able to get there in time, because I think both of those other plays that you just discussed, unless you kind of luck out and the person going up to the right directly gets stalled, you're not going to make it up there in time to be able to actually execute the actual sale of your potions that you need to.
Yeah, I've been pretty successful with going the top left and then across and bottom right and then up. Because both the top left and the bottom right both have reasonable point values in there as well. I mean, they're not the golden egg that the top right is, but that is a prosperous journey. And the time I played with our friend Erica, she just went straight up to the top left, and she gave me a real run for my money. So,
yeah.
I don't necessarily think that there is only one winning strategy, although that has been the one I've fallen back on more often than not.
Yeah. Now, my other complaint about this game would probably be along the lines of it feels like there's not enough luck involved in the game. There's really heavy strategy and there's a really heavy tactical thinking about what you're going to do, which is basically like playing chess.
It's a Euro for sure.
Yeah, but the actual, like, when you're playing against someone who's had 18 games experience, there is almost no way that you will win. Like, unless you're like a natural prodigy at that strategic line of thinking, and assuming that person is at least relatively competent and good at the game.
Yeah, that is true. It is hard to beat someone who has had more experience at it. But I think that's probably a criticism you can level at a lot of Euros.
Okay. Yeah. I don't have tons and tons of Euro experience. Harrow?
No, this one's... Sorry, regardless of what Bauxite is telling you, there is one winning... Maybe not strat, but there is one winning area. It's top right. And yeah, someone who's coming new to the game, like what Brendan did and screwing Bauxite over, so that's when a beginner player or someone new to it can win by copying the experienced players, but then you're just copying the experienced players. Where's the fun in that?
But not only that, he had to predict my moves, so he could see what I was doing and he could see what was on the board. The first game I won, I was playing with players who had played a lot more than me. Who played 4 games each, and I beat them by about 10 to 15 points on my first game. I'm not going to buy that criticism.
Yeah, that said, the listeners should also be aware that Bauxite has an unnaturally high skill level at certain random board games. So, a game that we once tried called Galaxy Trucker, he is actually undefeatable in that game.
Well, like Galaxy... Oh, wait.
Yes. It felt a lot like that. We played it several times, and it didn't go any differently. And I really liked the premise of that game, but it is just unplayable with Bauxite. Like, you're playing for second place, basically. I feel like this fits almost into that category of, like, an unnaturally high skill level in this specific game.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Okay. I think you're probably giving me too much credit.
Okay.
I'd like to see how you guys enjoy the game when I'm not around.
Yeah, Bluetongue, he's not smart, you're just stupid.
Yeah, sorry. My bad. Yeah.
That's a half-truth.
So...
My negative about it or something... Look, we can disagree about the whole winning zone, winning strat thing, but I don't think the clouds randomize it enough. Bauxite was saying that he won once out of how many times using the cloud strategy?
Oh, I only used the cloud strategy once.
Yeah.
So once out of 18 times.
But I haven't even gone up to the top right every time. I mean, yeah, the top right, that is where the big points are, and it's like clearly written on the board. You know, the towers near the starting area give you 1, 2, or 3 or 4 points. The towers in the top right give you 7, 8, 9, 10 points. 10. Yeah. So that's where the money is. And, you know, I do point that out to new players, but getting up there, you do actually expend a lot of opportunities and a lot of resources to get there. So I do think that in that regard it is somewhat balanced. And if 2 players go up there, you're both going to really struggle to get the benefit of those 2 things. So...
Yeah. Harrow, did you have any other points that you wanted to raise in relation to this game?
I think this game is going to be, when I eventually win, it's going to be like my ticket to ride, where I loved it while I was losing, because there's always, what can I try differently? What can I try differently? This one, when I win, I think I'm just going to need to win once, and I will lose all interest in this game.
Okay.
So what you're saying is that you'll have a long time with this game?
I'll just play Bluetongue.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Thanks, guys.
You could try playing our friend Nick.
Be nice.
He's one of only 2 people to beat me, so...
Okay. Yeah, I would recommend this, but I would recommend it with a disclaimer. It is not a family game. It's not something to cut your teeth on. This isn't like an early players game. This is a high-end game of high-level strategy that you need to be aware of before you buy it. I like the fact that it's going to be like it's easy to teach people, and it's straightforward. That's always a good, like, the rule book is not that huge. It's always quite easy to get your head around what's going to happen in the game. Getting your head around the actual winning strategy of getting up to the top right and how to mitigate the potential for things to go wrong is quite difficult. So, with that disclaimer, it's a great game, and I think I am going to keep it for sure. I think it retails for about $65 Australian. And I consider that money well spent.
Yeah, I'm gonna gloat about this again. So when it first came out, it was very much underrated. There were a few people on Board Game Geek who were like, "Look, this is great," but it really didn't get a lot of recognition. The box art, for one thing, I don't think really helped it. But it won a whole bunch of awards. I think it was at Essen, I'm not sure, but one big board gaming convention won a crap ton of awards. And after that point, it basically tripled in price in the shops. I managed to pick it up for $30, and like 2 months later, it was retailing for like $75, $80. So
that's quite telling in terms of the quality of the design. It's very, very high.
The design of the mechanics, not the design of the visuals.
Yes, that.
Yeah.
The visuals are not terrible. They're just not anything special.
They're not super engaging or attention capturing kind of thing. That's the one criticism I'd level at them. But yeah, I still think it's bright and appealing in its own way. Yeah,
I think you're bright and appealing in your own way.
Thank you very much. All right, so Harrow, are you wouldn't consider this to be a long-term valuable investment?
No, not for myself.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, keep that in mind. Heavily strategic game, deceptively difficult to master.
And I love heavily strategic games.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're all over Agricola. I don't understand why and in a lot of ways, this is role selection as its primary mechanic, which is pretty similar to worker placement. I don't get why why this doesn't jive with you.
Mm.
I think because when I go into a game of Agricola, I don't know who's going to win. There is no winning strat. I go into a game of this, I'm going to say who's going to get to the corner first.
Yeah.
Or who's going to stab it. Yeah, then that's a bit rough. It's not who's going to get into the corner first or who's going to be screwed over by another player.
Yeah.
There is a little bit of king-making in this, I will agree. You can look at the board and say, okay, so Harrow's here. He probably wants to do this and this, so I can either do that and that to screw him over, or I can do the best thing that benefits me. So
yeah, there'll be people at some points in the game who can make those decisions if they can look at the board discerningly and go, okay, look, I can't win from this point. What can I do? I can choose who's going to win. That's a little bit frustrating. So yeah, check it out. It's retails for about $40 US, and like we said, in Australia you can pick it up for about $75.
Yeah, 75,000. With the exchange rate.
Yeah.
And the Australia tax.
Yeah. I'm expecting this to go places. I still think it's probably going to end up with like some more awards and other bits and pieces, and become quite popular after Will Wheaton plays it through or something like that happens.
Thanks for joining us this week. We hope you've enjoyed yourselves as much as we have. You can catch us on Twitter at wellplayedau. You can send us questions or comments at wellplayedau@gmail.com. And if you like us, please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. We actually are also now on YouTube and SoundCloud. So we're slowly migrating to all of the platforms. So, yeah. Thanks, guys.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.